All right, that's about right. So in 1983, long before European unification, I had a summer internship in Paris, and I arrived several weeks early so that I could go visit Sweden beforehand. I had been an exchange student in Göteborg, Sweden, and I was excited to see my host family and friends for the first time since I had tearfully left them 2 years earlier. I got settled in Paris and proceeded to buy a train ticket. Now, one thing you need to know about me is that despite my waspy upper-middle-class upbringing, I had a very tenuous grip on the difference between right and wrong. Surely all those silly rules didn't apply to me. I had always been a cherubic-faced teacher's pet gay boy with great grades and a good singing voice. No one assumed the worst of me. But the facts were, I was a pothead, my high school's biggest speed dealer, a semi-chronic shoplifter, a consummate liar, and I drove drunk. In college, I was the first person I knew to get a fake ID by forging my birth certificate. Back to that train ticket. The cheapest option to get me to Sweden was a Eurail pass for $270. But European residents could buy an Interrail pass for only $150, and I had a plan. I still had a Swedish student visa in my passport with handwritten dates from July 1980 to July 1981. It being 1983, all I had to do was change the 1 in 81 to a 4, and voila! I would have proof that I had been living in Sweden since 1980. I tested out a few black pens to find the closest match, and with a swift stroke, I made the change. Way easier than forging my birth certificate. The ticket agent barely glanced at the visa and sold me an Interrail pass. I boarded an early afternoon train that would get me to Göteborg the following morning. These were the days of gracious old-timey compartments on trains in Europe, and I settled by the window to watch Europe roll by. I had a moment of trepidation when a Belgian border agent slammed my compartment door open and demanded to see my passport. But he checked it and handed it back without a hitch. My scam had worked. Soon after another border crossing into Holland, a fun group of students bearing booze joined me, and I knew several Dutch drinking songs by heart by the time we reached Holland. From there, the entire train actually rolled onto a ferry for the crossing to Denmark. God bless European infrastructure. Once in Denmark, the border agents came for our passports, but this time, rather than check them right there, they left with them. My Dutch friends didn't think anything of this, so I didn't worry either. But then the agent returned with everyone's passport but mine. When the intense wave of nausea and dizziness subsided, I haltingly asked what was up. The agent demanded my final destination, said, "Please don't change seats," and left without answering me. It was almost 1 a.m. The Dutch boys all started snoring off their drunks, while I stared out into the black Danish night, shaking uncontrollably. 2 agonizing, sleepless hours later, the border agent banged in and called out, "Adam Welling?" And this time he had a guard with him brandishing a rifle. "Get your things and follow me." I stood up and pulled down my backpack, tripping over Dutch bodies as I scrambled trembling into the passageway. I was brusquely informed that there was a problem with my passport and I had to get off the train in Copenhagen. The Dutch boys stared open-mouthed as I was led away. I was hustled off the train and through the nearly deserted Copenhagen station. We reached an unmarked metal door that the agent unlocked. I had seen enough cop shows to know that I was in an interrogation room. The agent left again, and I stared at myself in a one-way mirror. I'd never actually seen death at this point, but I couldn't imagine it looking any worse than I did. The agent returned with his superior. He produced my passport and turned right to the forged visa. Now, I was fairly fluent in Swedish, and Danish and Swedish are close enough that I got the gist of what they were saying. 4 år, the one kept saying. 4 år, which meant 4 years. Detta visum kan kun vara I 1 år. This visa can only be for 1 year.
Oh.
The senior agent asked me in English, "Where did you get this visa?" I told him about being an exchange student. "The problem is," he said, "these visas are never for more than 1 year. So how is it that this one is for 4 years?" I have no idea, I said. As much conviction as I could muster, I'd never even noticed that before. The agents shared a look, and the senior one said, "Are you sure? This will go a lot easier if you tell the truth." At that moment, any chance I had of becoming a master criminal or spy ended because I burst into tears. I confessed everything, tears and snot pouring down my face, while the agents listened with perhaps a tiny hint of compassion. "But it looks to me like you were trying to live in Sweden illegally," he said. The idea had never even occurred to me. "I'm not, I swear. I just wanted to save some money. I'm starting a job in Paris in 3 weeks for the summer." I showed them my documentation about my internship. "I believe you," the agent said, which promptly brought the sobs back. "But that was a very stupid thing to do, and you can't remain in Scandinavia." Now, at this time, the Nordic countries had a treaty that made immigration easy between them, even though Europe wasn't fully unified, and that explained why the border crossing into Denmark was so strict. They were in charge of protecting all of Scandinavia from the Mongol hordes, and me. "You must take the next train back to Germany, and you can't return until this is fixed." "How can I fix it?" I asked. "There's a Swedish consulate in Hamburg. Maybe they can help you." Now, it was only 4 hours back to Hamburg. If I could get this resolved quickly, I could still make it to Göteborg that night. The friends who were supposed to meet my train would hear a great story. "But," he said, "I have to make a copy of your passport and the visa and send it to the Swedish authorities so they have a record of it. It could be difficult for you to visit Sweden again." My heart sank. "Do you have to?" I asked as plaintively as I could come up with. "I'm afraid so," he said, and I watched horrified as he photocopied my passport. There was a very real possibility that I would never be allowed back to my beloved Sweden again. Soon, 2 armed guards arrived to take me back to a waiting train. Without knowing what else to do, I thanked the agents. The senior agent actually gave me a weak smile. "Best of luck to you," he said. And the guards led me back through the station. It was 4 a.m. To my dismay, the guards accompanied me onto the train, found a compartment, and sat down on either side of me, their rifles in their laps. The old Danish couple sitting across from us looked agog and seemed too afraid to move. I knew just how they felt. The train pulled out exactly on time, naturally, and soon the conductor came through asking for tickets. And that's when I realized that they hadn't confiscated my Interrail pass. The conductor checked my pass briefly and moved on while the guards just watched passively. My mind raced. The agent must have taken pity on me. Maybe he was just trying to scare me with the photocopies. Maybe he wouldn't send them to Sweden. Although the 2-hour trip back to the border between armed guards was torture and completely humiliating, I had a ray of hope. The train pulled onto the ferry and the guards left me. Out of curiosity, I got up and looked back at the dock, and sure enough, there they were, standing watch until the ferry departed. I waved, and the cute one actually waved back. In Hamburg, I somehow managed to find the Swedish consulate and was directed to a motherly-looking Swedish official behind glass. I began telling her my plight in Swedish, and I promptly burst into tears again. That lovely woman rushed out from her booth and gave me a huge hug. And then she said sadly, "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. Your passport is invalid in Sweden with this visa in it." She said there was an American consulate in Hamburg who could issue me a new passport, but it would take several days. And that was that. I didn't have enough money to wait around in Hamburg, and I definitely wasn't interested in admitting to American officials what I had done to their precious document. Throughout that brutal summer, I just kept showing my tainted passport and praying. And I naturally never made it to Sweden. Back in the States, I ceremoniously torched that passport and got a new one, claiming mine had been lost in a move. But those photocopies haunted me. The following summer, I applied for another European internship, and wouldn't you know, I was placed in Sweden. While I was really excited at the prospect of finally returning, I dreaded learning whether I'd be able to or not. I had to apply for a Swedish work visa in advance, which I did using my new passport. Lo and behold, my application was approved without incident. I have no idea whether the Danish agent actually sent the copies or if they just got lost in a pre-computer age shuffle. I've been back to Sweden many times since then, and I still cringe every time when asked for my passport. On that miserable night, when I was thrown out of Denmark, I was shown the error of my lying, cheating, stealing ways in no uncertain terms. And I began the long and torturous journey to the basically moral person you see standing there.